Welcome, confidential listeners, to a place where the silence of a hospital room speaks louder than 1,000 screams. Tonight, we walk through the fog of London, a city where the past is never dead and the truth is often buried under layers of regret. It's the story of Rose's archive, a woman who waited in the shadows of a sleeping man until the cold light of reality made her blink. It's a story of a mistake made in the dark, a confession whispered to unhearing ears, and a miracle that proved that even in a coma, the heart never stops listening. Titled, "He was in a coma for a year, but he heard my darkest secret." So, close the door, ignore the fog creeping under the frame, and listen closely, because the audience for this truth is only you. London is a city that demands hard work. Paul was a docker, a man of iron and grit, working double shifts to give our 5-year-old son a better life. We were simple people, living in a small flat in Whitechapel, where the tea was strong and our love was stronger. Until the day the sky turned black. A crane failure at the docks, a fall that should have been fatal. I stood in the corridor of St. Jude's Hospital, the smell of antiseptic burning my throat as the doctors told me Paul's brain was a shattered map. He was in a coma, a deep sepulchral sleep that they said he might never wake from. I looked at him, his face pale under the fluorescent lights, and I made a vow. I wouldn't let him go. I would be his anchor in the dark. I visited him every single day. I'd sit by his bed, hold his cold, motionless hand, and tell him everything. I told him about our son's first day at school, about the rain on the window, about how much I missed his voice. I treated his silence like a conversation, never knowing in the deep, dark ocean of his mind he was catching every word I dropped. 6 months passed. The London fog became my only companion. The flat felt like a museum of a life we no longer lived. I was exhausted, drained by the diabolical routine of work, childcare, and the hospital. My heart was a hollow shell, and the silence was starting to scream. That's when I met him, a man from the factory. Someone who saw the cracks in my armor and offered a warm coat in the middle of a blizzard. It started with a coffee, then a walk along the Thames. I wasn't looking for love. I was looking for a sign that I was still alive. One night, the weight of the loneliness became too much to bear. In a moment of absolute weakness, I let the warmth of a stranger eclipse the memory of my husband's cold hand. The regret hit me before the sun even rose over the London Bridge. I felt like a traitor, a ghost who had sold her soul for a few hours of heat. I went straight to the hospital that morning. I sat by Paul's bed, my tears falling onto the sterile white sheets, and I confessed. I told his unmoving form that I had been with another man. I begged for forgiveness I didn't deserve, believing his ears were as dead as his eyes. I didn't see the tiny flicker in his finger or the way the heart monitor skipped a beat. I walked out of that stranger's flat and into the gray London morning, feeling like a ghost. I didn't go home. I went straight to St. Jude's. I sat on the edge of Paul's bed, my hands trembling so hard I had to hide them under the thin hospital blanket. The room was silent, save for the mechanical hiss of the ventilator, a rhythmic reminder that Paul was still there, trapped in a body that had become a prison. I grabbed his hand. It was cold, motionless, like marble. I leaned in close to his ear, my voice nothing more than a ragged breath. "Paul, I failed you. Last night, the silence of this flat, the coldness of our bed, it broke me. I was with someone else. I let a stranger touch me just to feel like I wasn't already dead. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I waited for a reaction, a flinch, a spike on the monitor, anything to show he heard me, anything to show he hated me. But there was nothing, only the steady, indifferent beep of the heart monitor. I felt a twisted relief, thinking my secret was safe in his silence. I didn't realize that deep inside that stillness, Paul was gathering my words like thorns, pinning them to his heart. A month later, the morning sickness arrived. It wasn't just physical. It felt like my soul was trying to purge the sin. I stood in my cramped bathroom in Whitechapel, staring at the 2 blue lines on the test, a death sentence in the shape of plastic. The London fog outside seemed to press against the glass, trying to get in, trying to witness the proof of my betrayal. I went back to the hospital. I had to. I sat there, my hand resting on my still, flat stomach, looking at Paul's peaceful, unmoving face. "There's more, Paul. That night, it left a mark. I'm pregnant. The whole neighborhood will know soon. Your family, Julian. They'll see the belly and they'll know I'm a traitor. What am I going to do?" I begged for him to wake up just so he could scream at me. I wanted the punishment. I wanted the judgment. But Paul stayed under the dark water of his coma, drifting further away. I felt like I was confessing to a God who had gone deaf, never imagining that the man in front of me was a silent witness, building a case for a verdict I never saw coming.
"You can't hide a pregnancy in East London." The neighbors started looking at me differently. The whispers followed me through the markets, sharp as razors. But the worst was Julian, Paul's brother. He cornered me outside the ward, his face a mask of righteous fury. "Don't think we don't see it, Rose. Our brother is fighting for every breath, and you're growing a bastard in your womb. You're a parasite, feeding on a dead man's memory. You're finished here." He didn't just stop at words. He talked to the hospital board. He told them I was a distraction, a bad influence on Paul's recovery. I was banned, cast out of the only place where I could still feel my husband's presence. I spent the rest of my pregnancy in a cold flat, cleaning houses in the posh parts of London during the day and sobbing into Paul's old shirts at night. I gave birth to a girl in the middle of a blizzard, alone, with no one to hold my hand but the memory of the man I had betrayed. The girl was born on a night when the London pipes froze solid. I named her Grace, a name I didn't feel I deserved. I was a pariah in my own streets. No one helped with the groceries. No one offered a kind word at the pub. Even my own parents looked away. I spent my days in a haze of postpartum exhaustion, the smell of sour milk and damp wallpaper filling our small flat. My 5-year-old son would ask when Daddy was coming home, and I had no answer but a sob I tried to hide in the sink. The hospital wouldn't even give me updates anymore.
Julian had built a wall of paperwork around Paul that I couldn't climb. Look at you, Grace. You're beautiful. And you're the reason I'll never be able to look him in the eye again. If he ever wakes up, he'll see you and he'll see my sin. We're both ghosts now, little girl. I was drowning in a sea of my own making. Every time I looked at the baby, I saw the night I broke my vows. I lived in a constant state of mourning for a man who wasn't even dead yet, carrying a shame that felt heavier than the London fog. I thought I was alone in my suffering, never dreaming that miles away in a silent room at St. Jude's, the man I loved was beginning to fight his way back to the surface, fueled by the very words that were destroying me. While I was suffering in the light, Paul was suffering in the dark. For months, he had been a prisoner in a body that wouldn't obey. He couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't even blink. But he wasn't gone. His mind was a vast, empty warehouse where every word I had ever whispered echoed against the walls. He felt the warmth of my hand when I visited. He smelled my perfume, and he felt the sting of every tear I dropped on his arm. He had heard it all, the confession, the stranger, the pregnancy. I was in the deep water, Rose. I heard you tell me you were lonely. I heard the crack in your voice when you told me about the other man. I wanted to reach out and pull you into the dark with me, not to punish you, but to hold you. I wasn't angry. I was terrified for you. Every time Julian cursed your name near my bed, I wanted to wake up just to tell him to stop. You weren't a traitor to me. You were a woman left in a storm trying to find a match to strike. I started to fight. I pushed against the heavy lead of my eyelids. I focused on the memory of your voice, using your confession as a ladder to climb out of the grave. I didn't want to wake up for revenge. I wanted to wake up because I knew you were carrying a burden that was too heavy for you to bear alone. It happened on a Tuesday, exactly a year after the accident. A finger twitched. Then an eye opened. The doctors called it a medical miracle, but Julian called it a sign from God. Paul's return to consciousness was slow, a painful reassembly of a shattered man. He had to learn to breathe on his own again, to swallow, to speak with a voice that sounded like grinding stones. But the moment he could form words, he didn't ask for the doctors. He asked for me. You don't want to see her, Paul. She betrayed you. She has a child, another man's child. She's a disgrace to our name. Take me to her now. I was at home, hanging laundry in the kitchen when the black car pulled up outside. I saw Julian get out, and then I saw him reach back to help someone into a wheelchair. My heart didn't just beat, it tried to escape my chest. I saw the man I had mourned, the man I had betrayed, sitting there in the cold London air. He looked like a skeleton covered in pale skin. But his eyes, they were the same eyes that had looked at me on our wedding day, and they were looking straight at my front door. I stood paralyzed behind the lace curtains, watching Julian wheel him toward my door. Every step they took felt like a hammer blow to my soul. I looked down at Grace, sleeping in her crib, the living proof of my infidelity, and then at my son, who was already running toward the door, screaming, "Daddy!" I opened the door, the cold London air rushing in, smelling of rain and old coal. Paul looked up at me. He was a shadow of the man he used to be, his hands trembling in his lap, but his gaze was a laser cutting through my defenses. Here he is, Rose. Look at him. Look at what you did to his memory while he was fighting for his life. Show him the bastard. Show him why he should hate the sight of you. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, tears blurring my vision as Paul gestured for Julian to leave us. My husband, my resurrected ghost, wheeled himself into our tiny hallway. He stopped right in front of the crib. He looked at the baby girl for a long time, his breathing heavy and ragged. I waited for the explosion. I waited for him to spit on the floor or tell me to get out. Instead, he reached out a skeletal hand and gently stroked Grace's cheek. My heart stopped. The world stopped. The only sound in Whitechapel was the soft ticking of the kitchen clock. Paul looked up from the crib and met my eyes. He reached for my hand, the same hand I had held in that hospital room for 300 days. His grip was weak, but it felt like a mountain. Don't cry, Rose. I heard you. Every time you sat by my bed, I heard your voice. I heard you tell me how the bills were piling up. I heard you tell me how cold the flat was. And I heard you tell me about the night you sought warmth elsewhere. I'm so sorry, Paul. I thought you were gone. I thought I was alone. You were alone, Rose. I was the one who left you. I was the one who went into the dark and left you to fight the winter by yourself. Who am I to judge a woman who was just trying to stay alive? I didn't wake up to punish you. I woke up because I heard you say you were pregnant, and I knew that if I didn't come back, no one would be there to help you raise our daughter. She's ours now, Rose. The past is just fog, and the sun is finally coming out. I felt a weight lift off me that I had carried for a lifetime. He wasn't just a man who survived a fall. He was a man who had survived the darkness of the soul to bring me back to the light. We sat there in the middle of our cramped flat, surrounded by the ruins of a betrayal that no longer mattered, realizing that the greatest miracle wasn't that he woke up, it was that his heart never closed.
And so the archive of the silent listener is sealed, a story of a love that proved that even when the eyes are closed, the heart hears everything. Paul and Rose walked back into the London streets, not as victims of a scandal, but as architects of a new kind of grace. If this journey through the shadows of Whitechapel has moved you, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. Help us continue to unbox these heavy truths from the secrets inbox. Click the bell icon so you're always there when the next ghost speaks. But I have to ask you, confidential listeners, could you have forgiven Rose, or is Paul a saint in a world of sinners? Share your truth in the comments below. Because in a city as old as London, the only thing more powerful than a secret is the courage to forgive it. Until next time, stay safe and keep your secrets close. Good night.